Avi Meyer's Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine, a presentation of Sonny Hirsch and myself. Dial us up on the World Wide Web at www.ntnm.org, where we've got over 90,000 shows watched. Thank you so much. We're real big on community policing, camps24.org. And it is definitely election time. At this point, everybody's filed for whatever office they're going to file for. And we're going to have a variety of candidates coming to you over the next 2.5 months or so before the election. And it is my pleasure to introduce you to somebody who's running for the Republican nomination for Congress in the 5th District, which is the district that was once Rahm Emanuel's. And that's David Ratowitz. David, how you doing?
Hi, glad to be here.
Okay, what motivated you to run for Congress?
Well, Avi, I'm a bit of a student of economics, and of course we're in a pretty severe recession.
Oh, yeah.
The country in general is facing a very severe fiscal crisis, something we haven't really addressed directly and we don't yet talk about, but it is there. But unfortunately, this is a crisis we've seen before. Recessions happen. In my lifetime alone, there was a recession in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s, and now this one. Historically, we've handled them well and we've handled them poorly, and currently we're handling it poorly. Generally, in a recession, you have an oversupply of something. Too much investment dollars chases too few customers, basically. That creates an oversupply, you have a bust, you end up in a recession, in a nutshell. When that happens, things get corrected, the oversupply eventually dissipates, and something new comes along. And that new thing requires more investment dollars, more money in the private sector to finance new job creation. In the past, when we've relied on big government to try to fix things for us, protect us from ourselves, what ends up happening is money gets sucked out of that productive sector of the economy and the recession lingers. And I believe that that is what Congress is doing now. We are handling a bad situation in the worst possible way. And that is why, for example, we're already being told the recession is over, but there's no recovery. By November 2010, when voters go to the polls, they will still be in this recession is over, but no recovery has occurred. And that is why I'm running, because we're on the wrong track and it has to be fixed.
Yeah, even though I know there's a technical definition for what a recession is, with unemployment this high, I can't even think that it's a good economy right now.
Well, the technical definition of a recession is 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth, which is a fancy way of saying for 6 months in a row, the economy shrinks, contracts.
Yeah.
So you can have an economy that's no longer shrinking, but it's not growing anymore. It's not. All the people who lost jobs, they still don't have jobs. Nobody new is losing jobs, but there's no unemployed people being hired back to work. In fact, for 6 months now, the government has been telling us every month a new victory. Why? Less people lost their job this month than last month. Or there have been a couple months where all they could say is, oh, we've lost fewer jobs than we predicted we would lose. But as long as you hear the lost jobs or lose, you know things are still bad, regardless of how anyone spins it.
Yeah, we'll definitely agree with that. Why don't you tell us about your background?
Sure. I grew up in the Chicago area on the south side in Hazel Crest. I graduated high school, went off to the University of Iowa on an ROTC scholarship.
Oh.
I served in the Army. I served in Korea and at Fort Bragg in the 82nd Airborne Division. When I got out of the Army, I spent a year in corporate America. I decided I wanted something else, went back to school, got a law degree and an MBA at Tulane University in New Orleans, started a business while I was there, stayed there for a few years. And several years ago, I moved back up here to Chicago. And that's me in a nutshell.
Very good. Very good. And do you have any opponents right now? I mean, the filing date is just over now at this point?
Yeah, there are 2 other people have filed for the Republican nomination. I don't want to give them too much.
No, you don't give them any publicity. I was just curious.
Yeah. I mean, there's very marked differences between myself and my opponent. So voters will definitely have a choice. I think that voters will choose me, but
why don't you tell us what are some of the other stances? What are the other things you believe in that you'd like to see happen?
Generally, I'm a very fervent, limited government person. Prior to running for office, I was an activist with Campaign for Liberty, It's very important to me to, our government is simply out of control, the size of it anyways. For my entire lifetime, and I'll tell you, I'm just shy of 40 years old.
Okay.
So I am probably of that age where for my entire lifetime, government has been growing and growing, and we've known that bad things were coming. For example, I first became a voter in 1988. From that year on, for my entire voting career, I'll give you an example, a really easy example of the out of control size of our government, is that for my entire voting career, the Congressional Budget Office has been telling us in Republican or Democrat administrations that Social Security starts going away in 2016. In 2016, Social Security starts paying out more money than it brings in, and in 2036, Social Security is gone. It's not something we need to fix anymore. It is just gone. And of course, for my entire lifetime, Social Security has been spoken of as something that generations from now they'll need to fix. But as I said, I am just shy of 40. 2036 is when I retire. Yeah. And so to me, this Social Security, among other things, is not a problem for future generations. This is something that is going to personally affect me. And I have 2 small children. While I am retiring and not reaping the benefits of Social Security, my children will still be paying for it.
Wow.
And so these are, for me, the kind of problems I address they're here and now. They're no longer in the future.
Yeah. No, they are. I've been hearing my whole life, too, and I'm older than you are, that there's a problem with Social Security, and I don't see anybody fixing anything.
Well, I'll tell you, there's a whole host of problems. That is one of them. The whole idea of public corruption, a lot of these things trace back to a federal government that is far bigger and far broader in scope than was ever intended. I'll give you another example.
Sure.
I'm often asked about term limits. Now, I think term limits, and I'm talking at the congressional level, term limits are a fine idea. But the problem with term limits is they're incomplete. The idea, of course, is to eliminate the advantage of incumbency or the dominance of incumbents. But the problem that term limits seeks to address also goes back to the size of government, and I'll explain. When the founders wrote the Constitution, in their minds, they envisioned that every election cycle, Congress would have a roughly 50% turnover rate. And the reason they thought that would happen was because in their own lifetimes, in their own experiences with state legislators, the state legislatures had about a 50% turnover rate. That was pretty natural. I mean, occasionally, sometimes an incumbent loses an election, but most frequently what would happen is an incumbent would just not run again. Why? Because they ran it out of a sense of civic duty. It's like being on a condo board or your neighborhood association. You'll do it for a few turns or a few terms, but at some point you have to get back to your regular life. What happened with the federal government, and this is directly traced back to the 1930s, to the New Deal, all of a sudden, within the space of a couple congressional terms, the federal government became involved in every aspect of the economy. So if you're not in government, if you just have a business, it's important for your congressman to be very influential. Why? Because Congress has the ability to take away your competition, take away your business, give your business to your competition. They're involved in everything. And you, as somebody completely uninterested in politics, now it is crucial for you to have a powerful congressperson. How do you have a powerful congressperson? You keep financing their reelection. When they have a lot of seniority under the rules of Congress, they control a lot. And of course, because you helped getting them reelected, the congressperson is now beholden to you. And so the size of our government is directly related to money, the money involvement in politics.
Right. Now, we're running out of time right now, so you want to give people your contact information?
Yes. You can reach me on my website, David Ratowitz, or I am David Ratowitz, and you can find it at ratowitzforcongress.com. That is RATOWITZFOR Congress.com.
And, okay, contact him through the website, David Ratowitz. I want to thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
And I want to wish you good luck in the campaign.